The ground of Vorex 3 was a barren expanse of jagged rocks and treacherous ravines, a hostile planet that devoured the weak. Its sky, painted a perpetual blood red, churned with acidic clouds that occasionally unleashed toxic rains capable of melting steel. Amidst this inhospitable wasteland, the crumpled remains of an alien battleship smoldered, its once mighty hull now a twisted monument to failure. Katrina crawled from the wreckage, blood seeping through the cracks in her black exosuit. Her second heart had failed, leaving her sluggish, vulnerable, a far cry from the proud warrior she had been just hours before. She grimaced, her four-fingered hand clutching a shard of metal embedded in her side. This was not how a Zarl warrior was meant to die. Far in the distance, a shadow moved, barely perceptible against the haze. Instinct honed by years of combat kicked in, and Katrina dropped low, scanning the terrain. Her infrared vision caught the faintest heat signature. Humanoid, but too faint to be one of her own. Her fanged jaw clenched. The bitter taste of defeat flooded her mouth. It was their fleet that had crippled her vessel, their unrelenting firepower that had brought her crashing down. Now, one of them prowled this wasteland like a scavenger. She activated the blade grafted to her wrist, its violet plasma sparking to life. The figure stopped, raising a hand. Not in aggression, but a tentative wave. "You don't look so good," the human called, his voice amplified by a crude helmet. He stepped closer, revealing a lean, weathered man clad in patchwork armor, clearly built from scavenged parts. His expression was cautious, but not hostile. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be a pile of ash. How about we skip the formalities?" Katrina hissed, her blade humming ominously. "Stay back, Primalkin," she growled, the insult rolling off her tongue with disdain. The human paused, tilting his head. "Well, that's a first. Most aliens just call me Meatbag." He lowered himself to a crouch, just out of range of her blade. "You're hurt, and I'm guessing that fancy suit of yours isn't going to patch you up. You need help." Katrina scoffed, wincing as the shard in her side shifted. "And you think a scavenger can aid a Zarl?" "I think I'm your only option," the man said simply. "Name's Jack, by the way. Let's start there." Katrina didn't trust Jack. His movements were too calculated, his eyes too sharp for a mere scavenger. But as the hours wore on and her wounds refused to clot, she begrudgingly allowed him to lead her to his shelter, a rusted bunker carved into the side of a canyon. The interior was cramped, reeking of oil and stale air. Makeshift generators hummed, and walls were plastered with salvaged tech from dozens of species. A worn cot sat in one corner, opposite a workbench strewn with tools and half-disassembled machines. Jack gestured to the cot. "Lie down. I'll see what I can do." Katrina hesitated. Allowing a human to tend her wounds was an indignity, but her vision was blurring, and her strength waned. With a low growl, she complied, collapsing onto the cot. Jack worked in silence, his movements deft as he examined her injuries. "Your physiology's a puzzle," he muttered, removing the shard from her side. "But I've patched up worse." "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why help your enemy?" Jack paused, meeting her gaze. "Enemy? Lady, I've been stuck on this rock for 5 years. I don't care about your war. You're just another survivor, same as me." Weeks passed, and Katrina's wounds began to heal, though her pride took longer. Jack proved surprisingly resourceful, sharing his limited rations and teaching her the rhythms of survival on Vorex 3. The planet's predators were relentless, six-legged beasts with serrated claws and chameleon-like camouflage. Katrina had scoffed at Jack's crude traps until she saw them in action, catching a beast mid-pounce. "You've adapted well for a primalkin," she admitted grudgingly one evening, as they huddled around a fire inside the bunker. Jack smirked. "You're not so bad yourself, Zarl." Their uneasy alliance began to shift. Jack was fascinated by Katrina's stories of the Zarl Empire, while she found herself intrigued by his resilience and ingenuity. For the first time in her life, Katrina began to see a human as something other than prey. But their fragile bond was tested when a new threat emerged. One night, A deafening roar echoed through the canyon. Jack bolted upright, his hand already on his rifle. Katrina activated her blade, her instinct screaming danger. The creature that emerged from the darkness dwarfed the predators they had encountered before. Its exoskeleton glistened like obsidian, and its multiple eyes glowed with malevolent intelligence. Jack fired a volley of plasma bolts, but the beast shrugged them off, advancing with terrifying speed. "Fall back!" Katrina shouted, charging at the creature. Her blade slashed through its outer shell, but it retaliated, swiping her aside like a ragdoll. Pain lanced through her body, and she realized with horror that her leg was shattered. "Katrina!" Jack yelled, emptying his rifle into the beast's exposed underbelly. The creature roared in agony, finally collapsing with a thud. Jack rushed to her side, his face pale. "Stay with me," he said, his voice shaking. "I'll fix this." "No," Katrina rasped, her vision dimming. "You must carry my code. Return it to my people." Jack's jaw tightened. "Not happening. You're not dying here." Jack worked tirelessly to repair an alien beacon he had salvaged years ago, hoping it would send a signal strong enough to reach the Zarl. Katrina, weakened but alive, watched from the cot, a mix of awe and disbelief in her eyes. "You risk your life for me, human," she said softly. "Why?" Jack didn't look up from his work. "Because you're not just another alien anymore. You're my friend." Katrina's heart swelled with an unfamiliar warmth. "Perhaps. I have misjudged your kind." When the beacon finally activated, its signal piercing the toxic skies, Katrina faced a choice. Would she return to her people, bound by duty, or stay with the human who had shown her the true meaning of loyalty? Katrina leaned heavily against the bunker wall, her strength returning but far from complete. The beacon's hum filled the air, an alien sound that resonated deep in her chest. For days, she and Jack watched the skies, waiting for a sign that the signal had been received. The anticipation gnawed at them both. Jack was the first to break the silence. "So, what happens when they come for you?" His voice was casual, but the tension in his words was unmistakable. Katrina hesitated. The question lingered in her mind, one she had refused to confront. "I am a Zarl warrior. My people will demand I return to duty and bring your coordinates with me." Jack chuckled bitterly. "Figures. Save your life, and I get a bullseye painted on my back." "It is not my choice," she snapped, though her tone lacked its usual venom. "I am bound by the warrior's code. To betray it is to abandon my honor." Jack leaned back against the bunker's doorway, his face shadowed by the dim light. "Yeah, well, honor doesn't mean much when you're dead." He paused. "What about what you want?" Katrina blinked, caught off guard by the simplicity of the question. In the Zarl Empire, personal desire was a luxury afforded to few. Her life had always been defined by duty, by the will of her commanders, by the unyielding code etched into her very being. But here, on this desolate planet, she had glimpsed something different, something freer, yet no less worthy. "I do not know," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It came as a blinding light piercing the crimson skies. The Zarl vessel descended with the precision of a predator, its sleek, angular design a stark contrast to the rugged terrain. Katrina stood at the edge of the canyon, Jack at her side, both dwarfed by the craft's imposing silhouette. A ramp extended, and 3 armored Zarl warriors emerged, their exosuits gleaming under the planet's harsh light. Katrina straightened, suppressing the pang of apprehension that coursed through her. She was one of them, yet after weeks with Jack, they felt like strangers. "Katrina of House 4, the lead warrior barked, his voice amplified through his helmet. "You have signaled for extraction. Report." She stepped forward, inclining her head in respect. "My ship was down during battle. I have sustained injuries but have survived. I request reintegration into the fleet." The warrior's visor tilted slightly, catching sight of Jack. "And the human?" Jack bristled, his rifle slung loosely over his shoulder but ready. "The human has a name." Katrina shot him a warning glance before turning back to her kin. "He aided me in my recovery. His knowledge of the terrain was instrumental." The lead warrior's voice was cold. He is a threat to our security. The human must be terminated. No, Katrina said sharply, surprising even herself. The other warriors stiffened, their hands drifting to their weapons. The leader's gaze fixed on her. You defy protocol, Katrina? I defy nothing, she said, her voice steady. He saved my life. To kill him would be dishonorable. A tense silence fell. Jack looked at Katrina, a mix of disbelief and gratitude on his face. Finally, the leader spoke. Very well. The human lives for now. Return to the ship. Your fate will be decided by the War Council. Katrina turned to Jack, her jaw tight. This is goodbye. Yeah, Jack said, forcing a smile. Try not to get yourself killed up there. She hesitated, then pressed something into his hand. A small, triangular device glowing faintly with Zarl energy. This beacon links to me. If you are ever in need, activate it. Jack stared at the device, then at her. Katrina. But she was already ascending the ramp, her back straight, her expression unreadable. The Zarl vessel was a sterile labyrinth of gleaming corridors and pulsating energy conduits. Katrina felt the weight of scrutiny from her fellow warriors as she was escorted to the War Council. Her injuries and the presence of a human companion would be seen as weakness, a stain on her record. The council chamber was a circular room, its walls lined with holographic displays of the Empire's conquests. The 5 counselors loomed above her on elevated platforms, their visors reflecting her image back at her. Katrina of House 4, the central counselor began, their voice a modulated monotone. You have returned under unusual circumstances. Explain yourself. She recounted the crash, the predators, and Jack's role in her survival. She did not embellish, nor did she downplay her actions. When she finished, the chamber was silent, save for the hum of the holograms. You allowed a human to live, another counselor said, their tone accusatory. A species that has opposed our expansion at every turn. He was no threat, she replied. He is a scavenger, stranded and alone. To kill him would have served no purpose. The council deliberated in low tones, their words indistinct. Finally, the central counselor addressed her again. Your actions have brought dishonor upon House 4. However, your survival against impossible odds speaks to your resourcefulness. You will be given an opportunity to redeem yourself. Katrina's fists clenched. At what cost? The hologram shifted, displaying a star chart. The counselor's voice was firm. You are to lead an infiltration mission on the human colony of Altair. 7. You will prove your loyalty by dismantling their defenses from within. Katrina's heart sank. This mission was a death sentence, not for her, but for the colony. For Jack's people. As Katrina prepared for the mission, she couldn't shake the image of Jack's face when she had left. His defiance, his hope. The beacon he carried burned in her thoughts. Was this what honor demanded? To repay kindness with betrayal? The Zarl were watching her every move, leaving no room for hesitation. But deep within her, something stirred. A question that refused to be silenced. What if honor was more than duty? What if it was also about choice? As the Zarl warship hurtled through hyperspace toward Altair. 7. Katrina paced in her quarters, the walls pressing in like a cage. The mission briefing replayed in her mind. Infiltrate the colony, disable its orbital defenses, and pave the way for the Empire's fleet to annihilate the settlement. The plan was ruthlessly efficient, devoid of compassion, and utterly loyal to the Empire. Katrina's clawed hand hovered over the small communicator Jack had given her, the beacon she'd passed to him in secret. It was a violation of every code she had sworn to uphold. Yet, the idea of destroying a colony, knowing that innocents like Jack might live there, gnawed at her conscience. Her second heart thudded heavily, a rhythm of indecision. At last, she activated the device. On Vorex 3, Jack sat atop the canyon wall, gazing at the toxic sunset. Survival had become his routine again, but Katrina's absence left a void he hadn't anticipated. The beacon in his pocket vibrated suddenly, its soft hum breaking the silence. Jack stared at it, his heart racing. Hesitating only a moment, he activated it. Katrina's voice crackled through, sharp and urgent. Jack, Listen closely. Your people are in danger. Jack frowned. Katrina? Is this some kind of joke? I wish it were. Her tone was grim. The Empire has targeted Altair, 7. They plan to destroy it. I am part of the mission. Part of the... Jack's anger flared. You're helping them? After everything? I am expected to, she snapped. But I called you because I cannot stand by and let this happen. Jack, you must warn them. Prepare the colony to resist. Jack exhaled, his mind racing. Even if I warn them, it's not like we can take on the Zaral Empire. We barely have a fleet left. Then evacuate, Katrina urged. If you stay, they will kill everyone. What about you? Jack asked after a moment. If they find out you warned us, that is my risk to bear. The line went silent, leaving Jack clutching the device as the weight of her words sank in. Despite the betrayal her mission represented, her call felt like a lifeline. For the first time in years, Jack had a purpose beyond survival. Katrina's stomach churned as she boarded the stealth transport with her team of elite operatives. The Zaral warriors around her were relentless and cold, their loyalty unwavering. Her every movement was under scrutiny, her every word monitored. The transport slipped into Altair 7's atmosphere under the cover of darkness. The planet was beautiful, a stark contrast to Vorex. Lush forests sprawled across the landscape, and gleaming towers marked the colony's bustling settlements. To Katrina, it was a fragile beauty, soon to be shattered. Her team deployed quickly, splitting into groups to plant infiltration devices and disable key infrastructure. Katrina's assigned task was the orbital defense grid, the backbone of the colony's protection against an attack. As she approached the facility, her communicator buzzed faintly. She activated it covertly. Jack, she whispered. I'm here, his voice came through, strained but alive. We've started evacuating civilians, but it's chaos. Can you buy us more time? Katrina hesitated. Her orders were clear. Delay would be seen as treason. I'll do what I can, she said, her voice steady despite the storm within her. Katrina entered the defense facility, her cover story seamless. Posing as a technician performing an advanced systems check, she gained access to the main console. Her talons hovered over the interface, where she was expected to input the code that would disable the grid. Instead, she worked quickly to insert a countermeasure, a subtle loop in the system that would give the humans a fighting chance to repel the Zaral fleet. It was a gamble. If discovered, her actions would condemn her. Katrina, status? The voice of her team leader crackled in her ear. Proceeding as planned, she replied, masking her tension. System infiltration underway. As the code uploaded, an alert blared across the colony's channels. Human forces had detected their presence. Jack had acted faster than she anticipated. You've been compromised, the team leader snarled. Move to fallback positions and prepare for extraction. Katrina's hearts pounded. Her sabotage was nearly complete, but her position was now a liability. She couldn't let the humans be overwhelmed before the grid defenses were activated. Team leader, I'll cover the retreat, she said firmly. Go. Katrina, that's an order. She cut the comms, gripping her plasma blade. Jack's scavenger vessel screamed through Altair 7 skies, cobbled together but functional. He wasn't a soldier, but he knew the stakes. Civilians swarmed toward evacuation zones, their fear palpable as news of the Zaral infiltration spread. He landed in the forest clearing near the defense grid, hoping Katrina's information had bought them enough time. Armed with a salvaged plasma rifle, he pushed toward the facility, where distant explosions lit the night. Inside, Katrina fought like a cornered beast. Zaral operatives turned on her, their suspicion confirmed when they discovered her tampering with the defense grid. Her blade sang through the air, striking with lethal precision, but she was outnumbered. Katrina! Jack's voice roared through the chaos as he burst into the room. Her head snapped toward him, her expression torn between fury and relief. You should have evacuated. And let you do this alone? Jack fired at one of her attackers, the shot taking it down. Not a chance. The two fought back to back, a chaotic dance of survival. Katrina's movements were slowing, her wounds reopening. Jack took a hit to the shoulder but pressed on. his determination unwavering. The defense grid finally roared to life, its automated cannons pivoting toward the sky. Katrina's sabotage had worked. The Zarl fleet, approaching with the arrogance of invincibility, met an unexpected barrage of human firepower. Explosions lit the heavens as ships fell from the sky. But inside the facility, the battle was far from over. The last of the Zarl operatives advanced, their wrath focused on Katrina and Jack. "Get out of here!" Katrina shouted, shoving Jack toward the exit. "Not without you," Jack yelled back, grabbing her arm. She hesitated, the weight of her choice crushing her. "If I go with you, they will hunt me. You'll never be safe." Jack's eyes locked with hers. "Safety doesn't matter. Not if I lose you." For the first time in her life, Katrina let duty slip from her grasp. "Then we run," she said, her voice breaking. As the facility's walls crumbled under the weight of the battle outside, they disappeared into the forest, fugitives bound together by survival, betrayal, and the faintest glimmer of hope. The forests of Altair, 7 stretched endlessly, their thick canopies blotting out the fiery skies above. Jack and Katrina pushed through the underbrush, their breaths labored and weapons clutched tightly. Every distant explosion or crack of a branch sent a jolt of adrenaline through them. "Keep moving," Katrina urged, her voice low but firm. She favored her injured leg, but her gaze was sharp, scanning for any signs of pursuit. "The Empire will not stop until they find me." Jack adjusted his grip on his plasma rifle, his shoulder aching from the earlier hit. "You sure they're not after me too? I think I've pissed off enough aliens to get my own wanted poster." Katrina spared him a glance, the corner of her mouth twitching in what might have been amusement. "If they capture us, they'll wish to make an example of you. Humans have a reputation for defiance." "Glad to hear we're famous," Jack muttered. Ahead, a shallow cave presented itself, its mouth partially hidden by moss-covered rocks. Katrina gestured for Jack to follow her inside. They slid into the dark, the damp air cooling their overheated bodies. As they caught their breath, Katrina leaned against the wall, exhaustion finally creeping into her features. Jack rummaged through his pack, pulling out a crude medkit. "Let me look at that leg." She started to protest, but her resolve faltered when he knelt before her, his hands steady despite the situation. His touch was careful as he wrapped a makeshift bandage around her wound. For a human, his resilience was extraordinary. "You're surprisingly good at this," Katrina admitted, her voice softer than usual. Jack shrugged. 5 years alone on Vorex, 3 will teach you a thing or two." Katrina's gaze lingered on him. In her world, vulnerability was a weakness, but here, it felt like an anchor, a reminder that she was no longer bound to the cold rigidity of the Zarl Code. In orbit, the Zarl fleet regrouped, their losses to the colony's defense grid a rare humiliation. The War Council's voice boomed through the command ship, addressing the captain overseeing the hunt for Katrina. "Katrina of House 4 has betrayed us," the council declared. "She has allied with the humans and compromised the mission. She must be eliminated, and the human who aided her is to be captured alive. He will serve as a warning to those who oppose the Empire." The captain bowed, his expression grim beneath his visor. "It will be done, Counselor." On the surface, elite Zarl trackers scoured the forests. Their technology could detect heat signatures, but Altair 7's dense vegetation and diverse wildlife made their search difficult. They moved in small squads, communicating in clipped Zarl dialects, their frustration mounting. But they would not relent. In the cave, Jack and Katrina whispered plans under the cover of darkness. Their immediate goal was clear: evade the Zarl trackers. Beyond that, the future was a murky question mark. "We can't stay here long," Katrina said. "They'll comb the forest with drones soon. We need to find transport, something fast." Jack nodded, studying the map on his handheld device. "There's an old mining station about 10 clicks west. It's abandoned, but I've seen ships parked there before. Might be our best shot." Katrina's mandibles tightened. "And if it's a trap? Then we improvise." Jack grinned, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You're good at that, right?" She huffed, shaking her head. "You are reckless, human. It is a wonder you've survived this long." "Reckless?" You were the one who stayed behind to fight half your squad back there. That was strategy, she countered. Jack laughed softly. Sure it was. Their banter eased the tension, but the weight of their situation pressed down on them. As they prepared to move out, Jack hesitated, his voice lowering. Katrina, why'd you do it? Call me, warn us. You could have walked away. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, she was silent. Because you showed me there is more to honor than obedience. And because I owed you my life. Jack swallowed hard. Well, let's make sure you get to keep it. The journey to the mining station was grueling. The forest was alive with predators, both natural and mechanical. Twice, they had to evade Zarl drones, their sleek forms slicing through the air just meters above their heads. As they neared the station, Jack's scanner picked up movement. A group of Zarl trackers was already there, securing the perimeter. Katrina crouched beside him, her sharp eyes assessing the scene. There are 5, she said. 2 guarding the main entrance, 3 patrolling the outskirts. Likely more inside. Great, Jack muttered. Any ideas? Katrina's blade hissed to life, its violet glow cutting through the shadows. We take them by surprise. Disable their comms first. If they call for reinforcements, we are finished. Jack grinned. Now you're speaking my language. The plan unfolded with ruthless efficiency. Katrina moved like a specter, her blade striking with precision. Jack provided cover fire, using his scavenged rifle to pick off targets from a distance. The Zarl guards were formidable, but they hadn't anticipated an ambush from one of their own. Within minutes, the entrance was clear. Inside the mining station, they found what they were looking for. A small transport ship, battered but operational. Jack immediately began booting up its systems, while Katrina stood guard, her senses on high alert. Tell me this thing can fly, she called over her shoulder. Jack cursed as a series of error messages flashed across the console. It'll fly, but we might lose a wing or 2 in the process. The sound of approaching footsteps cut through the tension. Zarl reinforcements were closing in. Make it fly now, Katrina snapped, her blade humming as she took position by the entrance. Jack slammed his fist against the console, and the engines roared to life. Get in. Katrina didn't hesitate, leaping into the ship as Jack powered it forward. The vessel lurched into the sky, its thrusters spitting sparks. Below, the Zarl fired after them, plasma bolts grazing the hull. As the ship broke through the atmosphere, Jack let out a shaky laugh. We did it. Katrina's expression was grim. They will follow. Jack nodded, his grip tightening on the controls. Then we'll make them regret it. The ship rattled as it entered hyperspace, the stars stretching into streaks of light around them. Katrina sank into a seat, her body finally succumbing to exhaustion. Jack glanced at her, his expression softening. Where do we go now? He asked. Katrina stared out the viewport, her thoughts a tangle of loyalty, survival, and something deeper. Somewhere they cannot find us. Jack smirked. That narrows it down. As the silence stretched, Katrina looked at him, her voice steady but filled with resolve. Jack, if we survive this, we may have to do more than run. The Empire will not stop. Perhaps it is time someone stood against them. Jack's grin faded, replaced by a determined glint. You're talking rebellion. She nodded. A rebellion, or something greater. The ship hurtled into the unknown, carrying with it the seeds of something that could change the galaxy forever. The battered transport emerged from hyperspace near a desolate asteroid belt, the Zarl fleet nowhere in sight. Jack and Katrina exhaled simultaneously, the first moment of relief they had felt since fleeing Altair. 7. The ship's alarms were mercifully silent, but both knew their reprieve would be short-lived. This place isn't on any charts, Jack said, scanning the barren expanse. We've got a little time before they catch our trail again. Katrina, still seated, studied the stars beyond the viewport. Her thoughts raced as the enormity of their predicament weighed down on her. Time is not our ally. The Zarl Empire will scour the galaxy for me and for you. Jack leaned back in his seat, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Then let's make it count. In the days that followed, Jack and Katrina worked tirelessly to repair their ship and chart a path forward. Using her deep knowledge of the Zarl Empire and Jack's knack for improvisation, they devised a plan to contact those who might resist the Empire's rule. Katrina opened a secure channel to the wider galaxy, risking detection. Through encoded transmissions, she reached out to fringe worlds and scattered colonies, places ravaged by the Empire's relentless expansion. At first, responses were scarce, whispers of fear and hopelessness. But as word of Katrina's defection spread, the whispers turned into murmurs of hope. "You're becoming a legend," Jack teased one night as they reviewed the incoming transmissions. The renegade warrior who turned against the Empire. Katrina's mandibles clicked in irritation. Legends are often exaggerated. What matters is the truth, and whether it inspires action. Jack shrugged, a grin tugging at his lips. Truth or not, they're listening. Months passed, and the spark of rebellion began to grow. From deep space miners to rogue traders, pockets of resistance rallied behind Katrina's message. Jack's skills as a scavenger and engineer became invaluable as they built an armada from salvaged ships and outdated weapons. Katrina trained the fledgling fighters, her once reluctant leadership transforming into something formidable. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in a cause larger than the Empire or her warriors' code. Their secret base, hidden within the asteroid belt, became a hub of activity. Jack often marveled at the sight of disparate beings, humans, aliens, and even former Zarl soldiers, working together for a common goal. "If someone told me 5 years ago I'd be leading a revolution," Jack said one evening, "I'd have called them insane." Katrina tilted her head, a rare smile crossing her face. "And if someone told me I'd fight alongside a human, I would have cut them down for their insolence." Jack smirked. "Good thing you didn't." The Zarl fleet finally discovered their base, arriving in overwhelming numbers. As the Empire's warships surrounded the asteroid belt, Katrina and Jack prepared for what felt like an impossible battle. Katrina addressed the assembled fighters, her voice echoing through the comms. "We face an empire that has crushed countless worlds. But today, they face something they do not understand: hope. They cannot kill it, no matter how many ships they bring. Fight not for me, but for each other. For freedom." The battle that followed was chaos incarnate. The Resistance fleet, outnumbered and outgunned, used the asteroid belt to their advantage, launching hit-and-run attacks and ambushes. Jack piloted their transport, now armed with makeshift weaponry, while Katrina coordinated the fleet from the bridge. The turning point came when Katrina challenged the Zarl fleet's flagship directly. Her message was simple: face me, or watch your empire crumble. The Zarl commander, blinded by pride and underestimating the rebellion, accepted. In a daring maneuver, Katrina's forces disabled the flagship shields, allowing Jack to deliver a critical blow to its core reactor. As the flagship erupted in a massive explosion, the remaining Zarl ships faltered, retreating into hyperspace. The victory was hard-won, and the cost was high. Many lives were lost, but the rebellion had proven that the Zarl Empire was not invincible. Word of the victory spread like wildfire, igniting uprisings on dozens of worlds. In the aftermath, Jack and Katrina stood side by side, overlooking the ragtag fleet they had built. Repairs were underway, and survivors tended to the wounded. The galaxy's first united resistance was taking shape. "What now?" Jack asked, his voice quiet. Katrina turned to him, her expression resolute. "Now, we rebuild. We strengthen. The Empire will return, but next time, we will be ready." Jack grinned. "So, no retirement then?" Katrina's mandibles twitched in what he recognized as amusement. "Not until the Empire falls." They stood in silence, two unlikely allies bound by a shared purpose. The galaxy was still a dangerous place, but for the first time in generations, it was a place of possibility. And as they gazed at the stars, they knew their fight was far from over.